China is devaluing their currency, and they're also pouring money in. Their currency is going to hell, but they're also pouring money in, and that will totally pay for the tariffs. The tariffs are not being paid for by our people. It's being paid for by China.
Trade talks with China this week have not resulted in a deal. Instead, the president says he'll be ordering a new round of tariffs. CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy is at the White House now. Ben, there was supposed to have been a ceasefire in this trade war, so what happened?
Well, that ceasefire appears to be over, and this is an abrupt escalation of this trade war between the United States and China. The president has announced a 10% tariff on $300 billion worth of Chinese goods. These are new tariffs, so these are goods that had not previously been tariffed. And the administration really has gone out of its way to try to only put tariffs on things that people aren't going to notice right away. But with this $300 billion worth of tariffs, people will notice this. This is the kind of stuff that you would probably buy at a store like Walmart or Target, Apple products, things like that, because they're simply running out of goods that are more parts and supplies, those sorts of things. So this is significant. It's also significant because these trade talks in Shanghai just ended a day ago. The trade team just came back here to the White House, so apparently that was not very fruitful. There are going to be more trade talks in September here in Washington. The president says these new tariffs will go into effect on September 1st. So clearly he's trying to use these as a bargaining tool to get China back to the deal that they thought they had at least a couple of months ago. The president has accused the Chinese of reneging on that deal and also not coming through on buying agricultural products and other things that the president had touted as concessions that his team had gotten.
Ben, is the president prepared to stand his ground on this through 2020? He's facing re-election.
It appears that way. I mean, if you believe his tweets he's been tweeting this week, even as his trade advisors were just landing in Shanghai, he was basically throwing cold water on those trade talks, saying that he thinks China's dragging its feet and really trying to wait him out. His theory is that the Chinese might be waiting to see the outcome of the election, that if a Democrat gets elected, they think they might get a better deal. Well, the president has warned them. He has said, if I get reelected, you're going to get a worse deal than I have on the table right now, so you should probably make a deal. But the president does, at least rhetorically and with these tariffs, with this action, he does seem inclined to stand his ground and try to get them back to what he says was the deal that both sides had agreed to a couple of months ago.
All right, Ben Tracy, thank you.
Thanks.
President Trump is sharply escalating the trade dispute with China, putting U.S. consumers in line to pay higher prices for thousands of products. The president rallied with supporters in Cincinnati last night after threatening a new round of tariffs. They would add 10% to the cost of another $300 billion a year of Chinese goods. The new threat led to big losses on Wall Street yesterday. Ben Tracy is at the White House. Ben, how are the Chinese responding to this?
Well, overnight, China's foreign ministry says that if the president does go through these new tariffs, that China will retaliate, and that would likely mean higher tariffs on American products. Now, at his rally in Ohio, the president said he's going to, quote, tax the hell out of China, but he did save his harshest rhetoric for Democrats.
America will never be a socialist country. Never, ever, ever will it be a socialist country.
The president is in full campaign mode, calling Democrats socialists who want to destroy the country.
Democrat lawmakers care more about illegal aliens than they care about their own constituents.
A protester with a sign that said "Immigrants built America" caused the president to pause his speech for nearly 5 minutes, an interruption he then blamed on a Democrat.
Cincinnati, do you have a Democrat mayor? Well, that's what happens.
The president offered a scathing takedown of major American cities.
The homicide rate in Baltimore is significantly higher than El Salvador, Honduras. Look at Los Angeles with the tents and the horrible, horrible, disgusting conditions.
Ohio is considered essential to the president's re-election.
Thank you, Ohio. We love you, Ohio.
In 2016, he beat Hillary Clinton there by 8 points. But in a recent poll, President Trump currently trails Joe Biden in the state by 8 points.
We are finally putting America first.
And while American consumers are footing the bill for the tariffs already in place in the ongoing trade war, the president once again claimed otherwise.
You're not paying for those tariffs. China's paying for those tariffs.
Mr. Trump says China might be dragging its feet on a trade deal in the hopes of a new negotiator.
They'd say to Sleepy Joe, Sir, just sign right there. Oh, okay. I'll sign.
President Trump says these new tariffs will go into effect on September 1st. If that happens, it basically means there is a tax on everything that China sends to the U.S. That's everything from T-shirts and tennis shoes to iPads and iPods. And there are no new trade talks scheduled until after September 1st. Michelle?
We'll see what the fallout is. Thank you, Ben Tracy.
Should we worry about a global currency war now, Martin?
Yes, if we do not get back below 7. So if we start weakening here to 7.2 or 7.3, that's going to escalate the situation rather than actually take it off the table.
OK, then, just very simply, what does it take to get us back below 7 with substance?
We're going to have to see the Chinese authorities, like August 2015 and January 2016, actually come out and actually give the market some stabilising factor. And unfortunately, all of the Chinese leadership is actually away on holiday. They take a 2-week sabbatical out to the beach outside Beijing. And we're very, very unlikely to hear from the key issues, the key players, but the Chinese central bank is clearly actively involved, and they might have to put capital controls in place because the currency will have to be stopped in the short term. And the reason for the China to do that is their stability. Chinese stability will be significantly impacted if they allow the currency to depreciate significantly.
Right, and to that point, Martin, what will it mean for other asset classes and for markets generally if China doesn't step in to defend a specific level but just tries to control volatility in the yuan?
Well, we have this volatility spike already, and that's what they're going to have to move in. But other currency crosses, particularly in the EM space, those central banks will intervene. Already this year, clearly we saw the Fed cut rates last week, but we have 31 central banks that have cut rates this year. Almost all of them are emerging market central banks. This week, as you mentioned earlier in the programme, 3 more central banks are going to cut this week. We will probably see a lot more, and I would expect also that fiscal easing will now especially be talked about more actively, especially in Europe. Europe is going to take quite a significant hit because they are the largest exposure on trade, and I would expect further easing to be discussed there actively.